Good evening and welcome to Japan Earth Observer for June 26. This is the third edition of a news roundup on the space, Earth observation, and geospatial industries in Japan. I'm Robert Cheatham. I run a strategy and research consulting firm called Apica Labs, and I write a newsletter also called Japan Earth Observer. Tonight we're going to lead off with Japanese plans to build a sovereign satellite communications network called JLEO. This effort is going to be led by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. They're going to allocate almost $1 billion US in subsidies to build out what they expect will cost $2 billion to construct a satellite communications network. The project will require the company that is successful at winning this subsidy to meet conditions that will include achieving a nationwide rollout by early 2029, completing all of the network and data control domestically within Japan, being able to support video calls on smartphones, and enable free roaming across carriers when there are disasters. Japan doesn't currently have the capacity to build something like this on its own, so I expect there are probably three ways this might play out. Either one of the three Starlink partners, KDDI, SoftBank, and NTT Docomo, could potentially go after this. Rakuten Mobile announced a new joint venture with AST Space Mobile, a Starlink competitor, this week, in which they would have the right to purchase multiple AST Space Mobile satellites to establish a network. Rakuten has access to 700 megahertz spectrum that might enhance their odds of winning this, and they could probably get something running to support limited service by the end of 2026 and full service by 2027. And finally, the third option might be Sky Perfect JSAT, who just signed a deal to be the first Amazon Leo reseller in Japan a couple of weeks ago. Although Amazon Leo, this is the communications network that's being built by Blue Origin, Amazon Leo hasn't come close to reaching critical mass in terms of the number of satellites, and it's not clear that they could dedicate satellites to a domestic network like this. Elevation Space and Dai Nippon Printing, or DNP, have signed a capital and business alliance around orbital materials testing. Elevation Space has been building a re-entry capsule system that enables them to potentially carry out manufacturing of materials in orbit and then return them to the ground. DNP has a ground-based structural analysis capability. This alliance would enable a kind of end-to-end. You could get your manufacturing done in orbit, bring it back to Earth, and have the testing done through a single arrangement. This follows on Elevation Space closing a $40 million Series B funding round just last week. DNP is part of that funding round alongside Sparks Asset Management, Beyond Next Ventures, and Toyota Gosei. So Elevation Space is probably the leading Japanese firm doing this kind of manufacturing and return capability, but there are several other competitors in North America and Europe chasing after similar objectives. Varda, Winnebago, Reditus Space, SpaceX, Starfall, Atmos Space Cargo, Inversion Space, and Outpost Space all either have a manufacturing and reentry capability that is at some stage of development, or have announced some kind of point-to-point cargo delivery capacity. Masayoshi Son, the CEO of SoftBank, at this week's SoftBank annual shareholder meeting, shared that he is pretty skeptical of orbital data centers. There's a lot of attention to this, partially fueled by the recent SpaceX IPO and the IPO prospectus listing orbital data centers as a key opportunity. Masa-san has suggested that electricity costs on the ground are a pretty small fraction of actual data center operations. And so while you get free orbital solar energy, it's not that huge of a component of the costs for earthbound data centers, and certainly not enough to offset the transportation and maintenance costs. There's also data latency that he cited. You've got to move data in and out of orbit and you don't get the benefit of fiber optics on the ground that you have on the ground. And it's going to take a lot of years to build out enough of these orbital data centers to make a difference. I would also add that not only is it going to take time and be expensive, there's already a lot of congestion in low Earth orbit. We're heading toward having 100,000 satellites in low Earth orbit within the next couple of years. And that's just the communications mega constellations announced by American and Chinese firms. SoftBank is going to double down on investments in terrestrial infrastructure, including projects like Stargate announced in the US, investments in France and other parts of the world. Astroscale, the startup that is developing technology for debris management and on-orbit servicing, is launching what it's calling the AIRS initiative. AIR stands for Atmospheric Impact of Re-entered Spacecraft. It's launching this alongside Planet Labs and the University of Southampton. As activity in low Earth orbit accelerates and we have more and more satellites there, not only is there the risk of collision and debris spreading, but those satellites, most of them are going to return to Earth after completing their lifetimes. Starlink alone, which already has about 10,000 satellites, can be expected to orbit at least 1,000 satellites a year. So while space sustainability efforts have often been focused on improving in-orbit operations and debris removal, the atmospheric effect of all these spacecraft burning up in the upper atmosphere is not very well understood. So during reentry, as you know, spacecraft are exposed to extreme heating, interact with atmospheric gases, leading to melting and vaporization of the materials. This releases chemical compounds at different layers in the upper atmosphere, but we don't really know a ton about this. It's difficult to measure or model. Researchers have done some work to simulate the effects of reentry, but current simulations rely on very simplified spacecraft assumptions. Satellite companies, for proprietary reasons, are often unwilling to share details of the layout and materials used to construct the spacecraft. So without access to real world industry data, it's kind of hard to effectively model these things. So the AIRS initiative is going to create a framework for sharing data between spacecraft operators and manufacturers with researchers to do more effective modeling of this type. So we've been down this road before when we discovered that CFCs used in air conditioning on Earth was damaging the ozone layer that protected life on Earth, and we took action to change fairly rapidly what kinds of compounds we use in air conditioning, and it resulted in the ozone layer gradually repairing itself. It may turn out that we need to consider alternative materials in a similar manner for manufacturing our satellites. Speaking of which, this reminded me of an experiment late last year by Sumitomo Forestry and Kyoto University. They successfully tested the durability of a satellite made out of wood. While you might not think wood would fare well in the vacuum of space, it turns out that it's actually quite durable and is less likely to release harmful compounds when it burns up on reentry. Synspective succeeded in having its 10th Strix SAR satellite launched this week on a Rocket Lab Electron. Synspective is aiming to have a constellation of 30-some satellites by 2030. They've got 17 more launches scheduled with Rocket Lab over the next few years. That constellation is coming together fairly rapidly. Synspective also announced this week that they had gained CEOS ARD certification. Those of you who aren't familiar, CEOS is the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites. It's an international committee that is made up of all the civilian national space agencies and associated organizations. So Organizations like JAXA, ESA, NASA, ISRO, and so on make up this committee. CEOS has developed an international standard called ARD for Analysis Ready Data for satellite data that is ready to use without a lot of additional processing. So the fact that Synspective has met the requirements for CEOS ARD certification means that they have developed processing tools and procedures that make the data rapidly useful for end users. They're the first commercial SAR satellite operator globally to achieve this certification. I'm only aware of one other company, Canada, US firm Earth Daily Analytics, that has achieved this CEOS ARD certification, though not for SAR data, for multispectral data. This week, the Japanese government announced that it aims to develop a fund for 370 trillion yen. That's well over 2 trillion US dollars, aiming at technology driven growth strategy. So about 18.5 trillion yen has specifically been allocated for space and aviation. This won't all be public dollars, apparently. It aims to be a mix of public and private funding, though the details are a little sparse at this point. This will run through the year 2040. Another 6.4 trillion yen are specifically directed at satellite-related services, and another 10.5 trillion yen targeting physical AI that will couple AI with robotics and space systems. The government expects this injection of investment to yield at least 30.6 trillion yen in economic ripple effects from satellite investment alone. I expect we'll hear a lot about this in the coming months and years. Internationally, Japan is supporting a number of other countries' efforts to develop their own satellite constellations. The Thailand cabinet this week approved a Japanese-funded collaboration between Thailand's JISTA and JAXA agencies. This is going to target industrial growth, national security, and disaster monitoring over the following 3-year term with a 3-year renewal option. It builds on an existing JAXA data sharing partnership that included use of JAXA's ALOS satellites under the Sentinel Asia program for regional flood monitoring in Thailand. Thailand already has a couple of Earth observation satellites. Theos 1 was built by Airbus and launched in 2008, so it's been operating for almost 2 decades. Theos 2 was built by Airbus as well and launched on the Vega rocket in 2023. It's capable of capturing 50 centimeter resolution images. A third companion satellite, Theos 2, was lost just a few months ago on an Indian PSLV rocket when the upper stage failed to reach orbit, and all of the satellite payloads were lost. Japan is also donating $24 million to Paraguay for satellite technology and a new pair of lab facilities. The Paraguay Chamber of Deputies approved the grant from Japan to build this technology development facility at the National University of Asunción. The new facility is going to be operated by the Paraguay Space Agency and is going to include a space lab for small satellite design and a GEO lab for Earth observation, data analysis, and disaster management. A Japanese research team that included Iwate University, Hirosaki University, and Okayama Boring Company have developed a set of algorithms that combine multiple drone LiDAR images to model underground landslide slip planes and do so without having to take a lot of boreholes in order to do that modeling. So They have managed to demonstrate this and prove it against actual boring, and can use these algorithms to estimate moving soil volume and do so uh, in a way that will help support landslide dynamics prediction in future disaster recovery scenarios. The JAXA ESA EarthCare satellite, which includes a cloud profiling radar instrument on it, has gone operational, is now being used in Europe's ESCMWF global weather forecasts. So ECMWF generates these kinds of forecasts on a global level. This new cloud profiling data has not previously been available to any forecasting system. So this integration into operational daily forecasts is a pretty big deal. It's the first time it's been done. Um, JAXA developed this cloud profiling instrument, and it enables forecasters to understand the actual cloud structure internal to the cloud, taking measurements of that, and it's expected to significantly improve forecasting of extreme weather events like typhoons, heavy rain, and landslides. This week's deals. First up is Space Blast. Not everyone in Japan agrees with Masa-san about orbital data centers. The JAXA Space Strategy Fund has given an award to a research project around orbital data centers. It's going to be run by, the award is to a joint venture called Space Blast that is made up of several other companies: Digital Blast, Tokyo University of Science, Tech Lab, the High Energy Accelerator Research Organization, and Morgan wrote. The goal is to develop on-orbit data center construction technology. The aim is to, like other orbital data center efforts, to create reliable edge computing infrastructure in orbit. Next up is Oki Electric and LTS. They've also been selected for a JAXA Space Strategy Fund award to develop infrastructure management analysis tools. The goal here is to use a mix of satellite data, Internet of Things sensor data, and customer inspection data using AI to help optimize inspections and identify early warning signs of infrastructure deterioration before they become major issues. Third one up, Resonac and Japan LEO Shachu and Beam Technologies have signed an MOU around orbital semiconductor manufacturing. Resonac is a chemicals giant based in Japan. LEO Shachu is a startup. And so they're aiming to build a microgravity semiconductor manufacturing platform that can be hosted on a future Japan module after the ISS is deorbited in 2030. By using microgravity, you can grow more uniform, defect-free crystals that will improve the quality and capability of semiconductors. Mitsubishi Electric has selected MDA Space to manufacture next generation defense communications satellite. Mitsubishi Electric has built a lot of Japan's large scale, long term satellites, both Earth observation and communication satellites. In the currently, Japan's Ministry of Defense operates a satellite called Kirameki, which is secure communications satellite. This needs to be replaced as it's aging. MDA Space in the UK is going to build an anti-jamming multi-beam payload with digital beam forming capabilities, and MDA Montreal in Canada is going to manufacture and test the analog repeater and antennas. And then Mitsubishi Electric will integrate all of that in Japan. Also, Mitsubishi Electric news, it's won a contract with JOGMEC to develop a satellite-based greenhouse gas emissions tracking capability. So this is going to be a bit of like a tip and cue system that will integrate the GOSAT GW satellite, that's a Japanese national government satellite, and GHG SAT, which is a private constellation of greenhouse gas emissions detection satellites that can do so at high resolution. So the workflow would detect methane anomalies over large areas using GOSAT GW and then cue the GHG SAT to take higher resolution emissions images. Next up, Sompo and startup Cosmobloom are going to be partnering on orbital debris mitigation and space insurance. Sompo Japan is a very large Japanese insurance company. They run a risk management capability and also provide space insurance. Cosmobloom is a startup. It has an ultra lightweight deployable deorbit membrane uh, that could potentially be integrated into Sompo's space business support service. So, in the long run, we probably can expect to see insurance providers requiring satellite constellation operators to have integrated deorbit systems. So, Sompo being able to bring this to the people that it may eventually underwrite will enable this kind of thing to be designed into small satellites out of the gate. The Riemann-SAT project has signed a contract with Alba Orbital for Japan's first pocket cube satellite. Riemann-SAT project is a Japanese community space group made up of volunteers. Alba Orbital is a Scotland-based company that creates something called uh, Pocket Cube Deployer. So Riemann-SAT project is going to have Alba Orbital essentially package the satellite they're going to make and then contract to have it launched. Pocket cubes are a standard for what people call a pico satellite, a 5 centimeter square satellite. So a usual 1 unit satellite is 10 centimeters square. So this would be 1/4 that size, called a pocket cube. And their first satellite, called the RSP P00, is going to host several radio communications payloads, and Alba Orbital's going to get it launched. Micware has joined the Plateau Consortium. Micware is a mobility technology company. Plateau is a major 3D city model program run by the Japanese government that almost all the medium to large cities in Japan release data that are Plateau compliant. So this is open data 3D city models, and Micware has joined the consortium that manages that effort. NEC Space, which is a subsidiary of NEC Corporation, has contracted with the American company Apex Space for its Ares satellite bus. NEC Space is in the middle of developing a space-based optical communication satellite and plans to use the mission to validate its technology. The Ares satellite bus is known for its rapid turnaround, and using a standardized platform like this rather than building a custom satellite bus will help NEC Space accelerate their development and launch planning. And that's a wrap for this week's Japan Earth Observer News Roundup. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and you can also get regular news roundups and in-depth stories like this through the Japan Earth Observer newsletter at japanearthobserver.com. See you next week.